They say pleasure is a reward, but what if it is only a disguise? What if chocolate, the scroll of your phone, desire, or laughter are nothing but well-crafted shadows covering something raw, ancient, and far more painful? Let me ask you this. When was the last time you felt whole without needing anything more? Not just entertained, not simply satisfied, but immersed in a deep stillness that no craving could touch. Because here is the truth. We live in an age overflowing with pleasure, yet we are starving. You have never looked at pleasure this way before. Carl Jung once warned that the things we chase for comfort are often the very things that block our healing. And today, you are going to see pleasure through an entirely different lens. Imagine this. You wake up and reach for your phone before you even realize what you are doing. There is no urgency, no joy waiting on that screen, yet the pull feels stronger than hunger. A short video makes you smile for a few seconds. You laugh, and the moment dissolves as if it never happened. Another one follows, and another, until an entire day has passed and the ache inside you remains untouched. You put the phone down. Maybe you grab something sweet or salty, maybe both. Then guilt slips in quietly. You are not hungry, you just need something. But that something is not food, and it is not dopamine. It is silence. It is escape. It is the still point in a storm you have never named. Carl Jung described it this way. Every person carries a shadow, a hidden self buried beneath layers of distraction. Pleasure is the shovel we use to dig ourselves deeper. When you eat not out of hunger, when you scroll not out of curiosity, when you desire not out of love, you are not choosing joy, you are choosing anesthesia. The painful truth is this: most pleasure is not pleasure at all. It is a brief release from the weight of self-awareness. But the cost is immense, because each time you reach for false pleasure, it deepens your hunger for what is real. And when reality does not satisfy that hunger, you start to believe you are broken. But you are not broken. You are simply unconscious. Unconscious of how you have been conditioned to confuse escape with enjoyment. Unconscious of how the pleasure you pursue is often a symptom, not a cure. Go deeper for a moment. You are 6 years old. You cry, and no one listens. So you learn something essential at that age. Feeling bad gets you nowhere. But when you smile, when you perform, when you distract yourself, people reward you. That reward takes root. You repeat it year after year until adulthood, where your pain becomes unspeakable, and your pleasures become loud. Louder than loneliness, louder than fear, louder than the child inside you who only wanted to be held. Here is what most people never realize. Pleasure remembers. Each time you use it to numb your pain, you train your body to fear stillness. Silence begins to feel unbearable. That is why you cannot sit alone, why you need music even in the shower, why quiet feels like punishment. Jung understood this deeply. He saw that when pleasure is misused, it becomes the enemy of the soul. Not because pleasure itself is wrong, but because we have turned it into a shield against what truly needs to be felt. The real enemy is avoidance disguised as comfort. Before we go further, I want you to do something. If this resonates with you, if you have ever felt a strange guilt after indulging in something meant to bring joy, subscribe, not just to spread this message, but because you are not alone. And share in the comments the moment that struck you most, because acknowledging your truth is not weakness, it is the strength to witness yourself. Now let me show you the trap. Imagine a person walking through the desert, chasing mirages. Every time they reach one, it disappears, yet they keep moving forward, convinced the next one will be real. That is the nature of pleasure without purpose. It seduces us with illusion, and the pursuit itself becomes the addiction. The irony is that true pleasure, the kind that nourishes the soul, is quiet. It does not demand attention. It does not distract. It does not numb. It expands you. You find it in a deep conversation that shifts something within you, in finishing something you once feared, in waking up one morning and realizing you no longer need what once controlled you. We rarely crave this kind of pleasure because it requires effort, patience, and presence. Yet it is the only kind worth craving. Carl Jung once wrote that a person will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And pleasure is the most beautifully absurd creation we have ever invented to keep ourselves from doing just that. Rewind time, you are a child again. You fall, scrape your knee, and it hurts. You cry, and someone says, "Here, have a cookie, don't cry." Or maybe they say, "Stop crying, look, there's a cartoon on." In that moment, pleasure becomes your translator. The lesson settles in, not in your conscious mind, but deep within your nervous system. Your brain learns that pain is punishment, that emotions are weakness, and that the solution is pleasure. So you grow up and, without realizing it, you become fluent in distraction. Pleasure continues to translate for you. It speaks when you are too afraid to say, "I am not okay." It dances when you are too tired to admit, "I feel empty." It smiles when all you want is to scream. But here is what no one tells you. Every time you replace emotion with stimulation, you lose a bit of intimacy with yourself. Carl Jung warned that when the inner world is neglected, the outer world becomes louder. And what is pleasure, if not the loudest thing in our lives? The endless scrolling, the buzzing notifications, the intoxicating rush of attention, they all scream so that we do not have to listen. But what is it we are avoiding hearing? The pain beneath the noise, the hunger for meaning, the longing to belong, the wound of not being seen. You see, pleasure is not evil. It becomes sacred when chosen with intention, yet it turns poisonous when it replaces presence. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt guilty after indulging in pleasure? After watching one more episode, texting someone you shouldn't, buying something you didn't need, or eating when you weren't hungry? That guilt is not because you did something wrong. It is because a deeper part of you knows you were not nourished. You were only avoiding the hunger. This is the work of facing the shadow, and it is where many misunderstand Jung. They think shadow work means becoming darker, sharper, or more mysterious. But that is a surface illusion. True shadow work is the quiet act of noticing the moments when you betray yourself for temporary relief and saying, "I see you, and I choose truth over escape." Let me tell you a story. There was someone who could never stop chasing relationships. They called themselves a hopeless romantic. Yet every relationship ended the same way, intense, obsessive, collapsing, and repeating. When asked why they could not stop, they said, "I just love love." But that was not the truth. What they really loved was distraction, because when they were alone, the silence felt too loud. They had never learned how to sit with their own wounds. Pleasure became the bandage until it could no longer hide what was bleeding underneath. This story is not uncommon. It is the hidden story of millions, people who confuse longing with love, scrolling with joy, and numbing with healing. The danger is not that these pleasures exist. The danger is that we never stop to ask why we need them. This is the myth we must break. Pleasure is not healing. Pleasure is not peace. Pleasure is not strength. Pleasure is a tool. And any tool, when misused, becomes dangerous. Now think of the last time you delayed gratification. You resisted the urge to send that message, to give in to that craving, to click on that link. And afterward, you felt calm and proud. Why? Because discipline is not only about control, it is about trust, trusting yourself. And that trust is the real high. When you trust yourself, pleasure no longer owns you. You choose it with awareness, with presence, and with freedom. That is when pleasure becomes beautiful again. Not as a drug, not as a chain, but as a celebration. Now imagine this. You walk into a quiet room. There is no noise, no phone, only you. And instead of panic, you feel at home. Not because you have everything, but because you are everything. This is what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not through denial, not through endless self-analysis, but through harmony. The ability to feel pleasure without using it as a disguise, the ability to rest in silence without fear, the ability to be with yourself and truly appreciate the person you are with. That is the goal. But you cannot reach it by chasing constant stimulation. You reach it by lowering the volume of distraction and listening to what has always been underneath. What does that look like? It looks like noticing when your hand moves toward your phone and asking, "What am I avoiding?" It looks like letting yourself feel loneliness without fixing it with sugar, sex, or scrolling. It looks like choosing slow pleasure, the kind that takes patience and presence, the kind that rewards you in time. Because here is the hidden truth. Real pleasure is never instant. It must be earned. The truest laughter happens with someone you trust. The most satisfying meal comes after a day of meaningful work. The deepest connection grows from a conversation where you are truly seen, not merely noticed. Take a moment to pause. If this message stirs something inside you, that is good. What you are feeling is the quiet pulse of awakening. It is not dramatic, and it is not loud. It is steady. It is certain. And the decision that follows is simple. Will you keep numbing your pain with quick pleasures, or will you face yourself completely, courageously, without the anesthesia? Carl Jung believed that our psychological disorders do not come from trauma itself, but from our refusal to face what the trauma left behind. Pleasure, when used unconsciously, guarantees that we will never face it. Now that you have seen this, what will you do? Go deeper. You have heard the warnings. You have felt the tremor of realization. You have watched the mask of pleasure begin to slip. Now comes the part no one wants to face. The truth not only stings, it breaks you open. Because to reclaim your life from false pleasures, you must admit something terrifying. You have betrayed yourself. Not once, but quietly, every day, over time. Each time you reached for the quick fix. Each time you said, "Just 5 more minutes." Each time you avoided stillness because the silence spoke too loudly. Each time you told yourself, "This makes me feel good," when really, it only helped you forget. But listen closely. This is not shame. This is awakening. You are not weak for doing what you thought would keep you safe. You are not broken for wanting relief from the pain. You were surviving. And now, finally, you are ready to live. Once you see the loop, once you understand that most pleasures are not joy but sedation, you stop chasing the same illusions. The party no longer excites you. The scrolling no longer satisfies the itch. The date does not fill the emptiness. The sweetness does not quiet the scream. Because the real pain is not boredom. It is the absence of yourself. Let me paint this in a way that stays with you. Imagine your life as a house. Inside lives your wounded child, your unspoken truth, your unhealed memories. But instead of walking through the front door to meet them, you build an amusement park outside. Music, lights, candy, comfort. You host a party in the yard while that child waits inside, unseen. That is what unexamined pleasure does. It builds a festival outside your home so you never have to enter it. Healing, real healing, is the moment you step through the silence, walk into that house, sit beside that child, and say, "I am here now. You can speak." This is the work Jung described. He did not want people to become addicted to silence. He wanted them to stop fearing it, to understand that silence is not the absence of life, but the presence of everything we have been avoiding. And now we reach the final revelation, the last myth to break. You have been told that pleasure is the goal, that happiness means feeling good, that indulgence equals freedom. But freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want. Freedom is when you no longer need to. Real pleasure is not chocolate, not a phone screen, not the stroking of the ego. Real pleasure is the moment you realize you no longer need to distract yourself from your own being. You can sit in silence and smile, not because it is empty, but because it is full. Full of presence, full of truth, full of strength. You become the kind of person who no longer chases intensity, because peace has taken root inside you. And people will notice. They will say you have changed. You speak slower. You pause longer. You laugh less often but with greater depth. They will ask, "Why don't you drink as much as before? Why are you no longer on social media? Why don't you reply right away?" And you will smile, because they will not understand that you are no longer running from anything. You are simply present. That is what most people fear. Because when someone no longer needs pleasure to feel okay, they become powerful, unshakable, free from distraction, beyond manipulation. Pleasure can no longer pull them. Advertising no longer hypnotizes them. Addictions lose their grip, because presence has returned. And presence is the purest form of rebellion. Carl Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You are not a dopamine addict. You are not a bundle of cravings. You are not a consumer of feelings. You are a creator of meaning. And meaning does not always bring pleasure. In truth, it rarely does. It demands effort. It drains you. It challenges your comfort. But it is real. And it nourishes you in ways pleasure never can. So the next time the craving rises, pause. Not to fight it. Not to feel ashamed of it. But to ask, what do I truly need right now? That single question can change your life, because it breaks the loop. It hands you the pen. It reminds you that you are not your hunger. You are the one who decides how to feed it. Let me leave you with this. You will never see pleasure the same way again. Not because it is bad, but because now you see it clearly. You will still laugh, still love, still savor the sweetness of life, but you will do it with awareness, and that awareness will protect you from trading your peace for temporary comfort. It will make your joy sacred, your relationships cleaner, your habits stronger, and your silence as precious as gold. Because the only pleasure worth having is the kind you no longer have to chase.